The day after Thanksgiving for years has been known as Black Friday, and the shopping season's gotten some other names too. As we've developed technology, we have Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday. And yesterday also had a special name. It's called Super Saturday for the Christmas shopping season, or Panic Saturday, because apparently the Saturday right before Christmas, about 25% of people still haven't done any Christmas shopping. So about 134 million people go out shopping on that day, and I guess it's very productive for retailers. I would suggest, if you have not yet done your Christmas shopping, you need to keep it very simple at this point. And what is the definition of simple or simplicity? Is to subtract the obvious and add the meaningful. Well, how do you get simplicity? Subtract the obvious and add the meaningful. And our readings today really guide us to that place of simplicity. That for ourselves, whether you've done your shopping or not, or whether we are entering in now into this beautiful spirit of the fourth week of Advent, when our time of waiting is almost over, but we remember and have that opportunity to totally engage in the feast of Christmas. First of all, the prophet Micah, from the 5th chapter of Micah, tells us today about finding Jesus Christ in surprise, finding the Messiah in the gift of a surprise. You see, it was a surprise that the Messiah was going to come there to Bethlehem. Micah foretold this. Micah told the people that from Bethlehem, which is about 5 miles from the downtown area of Jerusalem, today it would be considered a suburb, but at that particular time it was miles away, it seemed, a whole nother world. And Bethlehem's a tiny little town that was never expected for the Messiah to be born there. Everybody thought it would happen in Jerusalem because that's where royalty was, that's where the power was. So of course that's where the Messiah would come. And Micah is known in the 3rd chapter for his beautiful phrase when people were looking to say, how do I find God? What do I do for God? How do I bring God into my life? Micah said very simply, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. So really, that gift of humility is what came to Bethlehem. It was in the 1860s that a certain person, a pastor of another faith tradition, went there over to Jerusalem for Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, this gentleman rode a horse from there in Jerusalem over to Bethlehem. It's only, again, about 5 miles or so. But he was so moved by it that he put his words down into what became a song known as O Little Town of Bethlehem. And in that song, we hear that for in thy dark streets shining, the everlasting light, the hopes and fears of all the years meet with you tonight. So what a beautiful thought there in Bethlehem. All the hopes, all the fears, all of the dreams that people have came to fruition in that place, right there in a very simple manger. That really Christ can come to places that are very small. Christ can come to places that are very dark. Christ can come to souls that are very troubled. No one in the world is absent on the night of Christmas, and from the person of Christ, he came for all peoples, not just for one particular group. So the simple message of Micah here is God just might surprise us this Christmas. We just don't know how his grace can come upon us. If he could find his way to Bethlehem in the darkness and in a troubled world, just imagine what he can do for us. The second reading from Hebrews talks to us and tells us today about Christ being the sacrifice that came to do the Father's will. That was the best gift that Jesus could give to the Father, was himself on a cross. He said, I've come to do your will, not my own. So there's a message in that for us as well. The best gift that we can give to other people, the best gift that we can give to God this Christmas It's just simply following his will, turning ourselves over to him. Also, for other people, you can buy expensive gifts for them this Christmas. But guess what? What are they yearning for? They're yearning for you. The best gift in relationship is not something that's wrapped under the tree. It is the person. It is how we share our lives, how we relate to another. So a simple message, perhaps, as we enter into these days is maybe let go of the electronics, let go of the television and everything else, and just be. Allow God's will to take over. Instead of being controlled and scheduled, just let God be with you as we enter into Christmas. Finally, our gospel reading today, the third reading, speaks to us again of a beautiful story, one that's common that we should all be familiar with, and that is of the visitation. This is from Luke's gospel, and just prior to this, we have two, not just one, but two Annunciation stories that come together. Because Luke's gospel begins really with the Annunciation to Zechariah of the birth of John the Baptist, something that they thought would be impossible in their older age, that they would have a child. But he and Elizabeth had a child, and that was just an amazing thing. And then we have the Annunciation that we all know about, depicted in our window, of where the angel came to Mary, invited her to be the mother of his son. So Mary and Elizabeth come together. It's an intersection of these two beautiful stories, of the two beautiful births that came to prepare us and bring us the gift of salvation. And so Mary, after being greeted by Elizabeth, this was an ordinary visit. This was normal for families to come together. Two pregnant women, both at the same time. The baby leaps for joy in her womb. Just think about that Mary was a Christ bearer. There at that time, the recognition of that child that was there, that still had 6 more months to be born, but that John the Baptist recognized that life in the womb is something that really should give each one of us dignity from the moment of our own conception and of every other conception. Life is precious. Life is beautiful. And Mary is so overtaken by these words of Elizabeth that she proclaims what's written here at the end of our main aisle as you exit. Proclaim the greatness of God. What did Mary say? My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God my Savior. So besides the surprise, besides the gift of sacrifice of self, what are we asked to do is to find our God in the ordinary. As we prepare our hearts, is to say that God comes in that ordinary meeting, in those places maybe that we least expect. But sometimes in life and in our daily lives, we just keep going about life, but we're not present to the moment. When we are present to the moment, we cannot miss our God. When we are present to the moment, not worried and anxious and fearful, when we are present to the moment, we are able to embrace a God who comes to us not in the extraordinary and in the high drama, but in the simplicity, in the ordinary of daily life. So as we enter into these final hours, as we prepare our hearts, it's a good idea to remember the simplicity of this message. Subtract the obvious and add the meaningful. And if we are able to do that, we will see how God will surprise us this Christmas. We will see how we can give of ourselves and feast on the gift of holy presence of one another. And finally, we just might find God in the everyday. Just what we think is boring, is a doldrum, we might find the presence of the Lord. And when we do that, when we find that simplicity, when we realize that this is a celebration that, yes, we've done before and we're going to do again, but this one is special for us. This one can be one that is simple. This one is one that can have a meaning. Perhaps that can be the best Christmas that we have ever had.